You're listening to the Sports Circus, and I'm Mike Golick.
You can put it on the board. Yes!
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, of course, the king of all those gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. Hell, even those half-pound Angus burgers. Yes, Angus burgers, too. Angus burgers and Wagyu burgers are the best I've ever had. Wait till you try them. UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Give them a call. Find out what's for dinner at 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935 for UppercutChops.com. Yes! And welcome in everybody listening in on television and radio, on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates, and independents from coast to coast. Everybody else watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Time Warner, and WOW Cable TV, thanks for joining us. Also, everybody on hotel television in over 500,000 rooms from coast to coast, it's a pleasure going into your room and entertaining you. All right, look, this one is about the brackets. All right, so if you're a college basketball once-a-year fan, you probably fill out these brackets. If you're a fiend like me, you probably just wait to fill the bracket and watch all year which college basketball teams are good, which ones. It's the old pretenders and contenders thing, right? And so when we look at the brackets, I'm going to spend each segment, we're going to take a look at these particular brackets. Why? Because we can. Because a lot has happened in these brackets already, as far as the round of 64, the round of 32, heading into the round of 16. And, you know, watching the games is, look, it's not a boring thing for all the people that think, well, you know, it's college basketball. It's not very exciting like the pros. No, college basketball is one of the pure forms of NCAA competition that's out there. And this is a situation where it's so much different and so much better than the NCAA, I guess, the college football playoff setup. And of course, they're changing that setup to 5+7, whatever. The reality is, the little schools don't get a chance to play against the big schools in football because of why? Well, we've got a recruiting issue. We've got recruiting budgets. We have TV contracts. We have all this other garbage. And it sort of stands in the way of equality and fairness. You know, people talk about DEI, well, diversity, equity, inclusion. Well, what about when it comes to diversity in the schools and, you know, equality in their opportunity? So we're talking about a little Division III school or Division II school, a 1AA school, versus a Power 5, right? How about a little diversity in there? Let's get some of these other ones, but you got to earn it. This isn't a free lunch. No. You've got to earn it. But what the point that I'm making here is the equity or the equality in this is, hey, look, you won your conference. How about Yale? We'll take Yale, for example. Yale winning the Ivy League. And Yale won the Ivy League, and so they get a chance to compete against the big boys. And as a matter of fact, Yale was a 13 seed in their bracket, in the Eastern bracket, and they were pinned up against big, bad Auburn. And Auburn from the SEC, this is for all you people listening in on WAUD in Auburn, Alabama. And, you know, Auburn, me personally, I had Auburn getting all the way to the round of 8, to the Elite 8, and then eventually taking a tumble there. But it happens that this equality that I'm referring to is, hey, let's give the little guy a shot to compete against the big guy. And look, everybody in Auburn right now, you may be sour grapes because Yale beat Auburn 78-76 in a wild game. I mean, nobody ever expected an Ivy League school to score 78 points in the first place because they're typically the four corners defense and four corners offense, even when it comes to playing college basketball, especially when they're playing a Power 5. That's the one way to sort of even out the playing field. So usually the Ivy schools typically are lower scoring games when they play the Power 5 or the bigger conferences. In this particular case, Yale ran up 78 on a very good Auburn squad who was actually the 4th seed in the East. And it's a little mind-boggling to realize that, hey, look, the little guy that doesn't have the gigantic recruiting budget of the Southeast Conference was able to match up, play, and beat a Power 5 school. I mean, that in itself, I got to tell you, folks, I'm sorry, everybody in Auburn, I got to give a tip of the hat to Yale and the Bulldogs over there because, look, this was that equality thing. And, hey, it's inclusive, so let these guys get in there and play. So, people always talk about that DEI stuff. Well, guess what? It also applies from a school-to-school basis. And I love the fact that here, even in, I guess we'll say, I think it was the Midwest. Yeah, it was the Midwest. So it was a play-in where Grambling, an HBCU, a historical black college and university, was able to play against Big Bad Purdue. And I have to tell you, I'm going to get to that one in a little while, but there's a nice story there where, remember, the HBCUs, they don't see that action when it comes to playing in college football. In the bowl games, no, they have one particular bowl game for, I think that's called the Celebration Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, for the HBCUs, which is completely wrong. And frankly, the HBCUs should be able to compete like all the others, whether it's the Sugar Bowl or the Orange Bowl or the Liberty Bowl or Independence Bowl, whatever the hell it is, right? The Tex Slayer Bowl and the Cheez-It Bowl. That's an unusual one. Of course, one of my favorites is the Tony the Tiger Bowl. Of course, I tend to like Tony the Tiger cereal, so all right, we're going to give that one a nice round of applause as well. But my point is, college basketball, it's a pure form of competition, and the little guys get to match up with the big guys. Let's take the number 1 seed UConn Huskies in the East, the number 1 overall seed. They played Little Stetson out of Florida. If I'm not mistaken, Stetson is in that greater Fort Lauderdale area. Not really sure, but my point is, hey, at least the big dog got a chance to play the little team, and better yet, the little team got a chance to play the big dog. And let's face it, if you belong in the tournament, well, Stetson got Mack trucked 91-52. The point is, at least they played the game. You got to play the game. If you don't play the game, you never know what's going to happen. So UConn moves on from that one, and there was no surprise there. And then you had right down in Florida as well. You had Florida Atlantic, who, if I'm not mistaken, made the Final Four a year ago. They played a very gritty Northwestern team from the north suburbs of Chicago, from Evanston, Illinois. And Northwestern, of course, they played a very punch-you-in-the-mouth kind of game. In fact, the coach for Northwestern is Doug Collins' son, Chris Collins. You may recall Doug Collins was the one that built the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Charles Oakley and Bill Cartwright and everybody else. That's Bill Cartwright. Bill Cartwright had the best voice. He's like a cartoon character. But anyway, Northwestern with a 12-point win over Florida Atlantic. And then going down the bracket, San Diego State, who was a 5, played University of Alabama Birmingham. Again, those two teams likely would not have even played a football game. And so it was a very tight game, a hard-fought game, 69-65, SDSU over UAB. And we already mentioned the Auburn falling to Yale game. And so there's the David and Goliath matchup. Brigham Young, who was a very, very good squad, loses 67, and Duquesne scores 71. Duquesne out of Pittsburgh. Again, a little school that typically wouldn't even compete on the football field, let alone on the basketball court. But guess what? Duquesne comes up a 4-point winner over Brigham Young. Illinois destroys Morehead State. But that matchup you'd never see in football. The University of Illinois against Morehead State, and of course Illinois gets a 16-point win over there as a 3. Washington State in a very tough game against Drake, the Drake Bulldogs. Then it was 66-61. Again, those guys would never play in football. And then the number 2 Iowa State Cyclones against South Dakota State. That's a 1AA. And so you'd never even see that matchup on the football field. All right, so the number 2 Iowa State with a 17-point victory. They matched up in the next round of 32 against Washington State, and they got themselves an 11-point win. So it's Power 5 to Power 5, Big 12 and Pac-12 in that one. And moving up that bracket, Illinois with an easy win over Duquesne, 89-63 in the round of 32. They move forward, and they're going to play Iowa State. San Diego State destroyed Yale, yet Auburn couldn't beat Yale, 85-57. And San Diego State will move on to play UConn, and UConn manhandled Northwestern 75-58. So our round of 16, the Sweet 16 is set in the Eastern bracket, and when we come back from break, we're going to check out the opposite bracket to them, which would be the South bracket, in just a few moments here on the Sports Circus. Yes, your headquarters for NCAA tournament time. Don't go anywhere.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935. Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Could you use a little extra money right now? If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at uppercutchops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at uppercutchops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas at the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the American Business Trust Company, helping companies with strategy, sales and marketing, capital resources, and establishing companies with physical locations or on the internet. You decide. For more information, contact the American Business Trust Company at info@abtrustco.com. That's info@abtrustco.com. Yes. All right, welcome back, everybody, on television, radio, all of our friends on our network affiliates, and all of our independents as well. Looks like there's about 206 of those independents over and above. Crazy stuff, folks. We've expanded from just an idea from 2015, put the show together in 2016, done a couple of thousand shows since then. It's been a lot of fun, lots and lots of great guests. Of course, we'll get into that in a little while. But want to get back to this, well, the South bracket on the men's NCAA tournament. We already covered the East bracket, which, of course, UConn, it looks to me, on my bracket anyway, of course, we all have those. I actually have UConn coming out of the East, and so far that's holding true. And I've got them playing in the Elite Eight against Illinois. I've got Illinois upsetting Iowa State in my bracket. So that bracket looks pretty okay. On the other side, opposite that, is the South bracket. And that was by, well, let's put it this way. The University of Houston was the number one seed in that bracket. Not so sure they should have been the number one seed. They might be a little bit overrated. But then again, we'll give it to them because, I don't know, they were second ranked, whatever, in the nation, but they got murdered in their conference final game against, that was in the tournament in the Big 12 conference, against Iowa State. Iowa State just took them, well, let's put it this way, out in the backyard, and they beat the daylights out of them. I think they beat them by about 25. Iowa State gets a 2 seed in the opposite bracket, and I think the reason for that is because they're thinking, well, you know what, maybe if the Big 12 and Big 12 match up, we'll go ahead and give them a shot to play the team that beat them, being Iowa State beating Houston, in the final game in the championship game, if it was even to come to that. That's how they set a lot of these things up. And so Houston was the number one seed, and they were matched up in the first round against a small school, like we had mentioned in the first segment. This is the only tournament really, well, I can't say only, but this is the one versus football that actually is fair because the little school gets a shot. So Houston being the number one, Longwood being the number 16, it was a long shot to get in there in the first place, but Longwood played inspired basketball just to get there in the first place, and they actually did very well. In fact, we're going to give Longwood a nice round of applause. Unfortunately, they fell to Houston 86-46 in the first round. And then, looking at the bottom of the bracket, it was actually Marquette. Marquette was the number 2 seed in this bracket, and they played Western Kentucky. That would be the Hilltoppers. And that's a good squad, no joke. In fact, Western Kentucky was up big in that game, and then Marquette came out of nowhere and somehow ended up winning that game by 18 points. It's just that way, folks. This is what happens in the tournament. Sometimes the moment gets a little bit too big for the schools and their team that haven't been there. And so I think that's may have what happened to Longwood, and it may have been what happened to Western Kentucky. But Western Kentucky is a formidable opponent. I mean, they're a Division I school, but it's not every day that they have to face Marquette, the Golden Eagles. Those guys, boy, they really know how to play. So going to the number 3 seed in that bracket, it was Kentucky. This was probably the best game that I saw so far in the tournament. And it was Kentucky, Big Blue, losing to Oakland. And if you don't know where Oakland is, it's out of the greater Detroit area. Kentucky lost to Oakland, and they were beat soundly. A 3 as Kentucky lost to a number 14 Oakland, 80-76. Folks, I watched this one, and Oakland beat them the entire game. It wasn't a matter of, well, this team got lucky and this and that. No. Had nothing to do with that. Oakland, the Golden Grizzlies, were ready from Jump Street with Kentucky, and they beat them 80-76. The score looked a little bit closer than what it was, but really, they dominated that game. And in fact, they deserve an astounding round of applause. Of course, that game alone broke most people's brackets from the perfect bracket situation. So the number 3 went down. Now, number 4, Duke played the Catamounts of Virginia. In case you don't know what a catamount is, that's basically like a big cat, like a mountain lion. And Duke beat them handily, 64-47. So, moving on, it was the number 5 Wisconsin Badgers from the Power 5 losing to number 12 James Madison. The James Madison Dukes, 72-61. Mind you, it was Wisconsin that won the Big Ten tournament. Wisconsin in overtime got lucky and beat Purdue 76-75, but it was James Madison that turned right around in the first round. It was the little guy beating the big guy. The Dukes end up beating Wisconsin. And then it was Texas Tech, the number 6 ranked team, losing, that's in the South bracket, the number 6 seeded team, losing to a very hot NC State team. And NC State just beat them like a drum. 80-67 was the final, but it looked like a bigger score than that. It could have been a 30-point game. So the number 11 moves on. And when we look at the number 12, we already had James Madison, 13 Vermont. We already saw they lost to Duke. Number 14 Oakland beat Kentucky. And then we go down to the 7 and 10 matchup, and it was Colorado played inspired basketball over 7 seed, 10 seed Colorado beats number 7 seed from the SEC, Florida, 102-100 in a wild game. And then the final game of that first round featured Texas A&M as the 9 seed and Nebraska as the 8 seed. Nebraska played very good ball, but I'll tell you what, that Texas A&M team, we're going to get to them in a second. Outside of this win, 98-83. They beat a very good Nebraska team by 15. So let's think about what Texas Tech had done. Now, Texas Tech played in the last 6 weeks of the season. They played inspired basketball. They had some nice wins. They played very, very well. Very difficult schedule. And they were then, in their reward for winning that game against Nebraska, they got to play number 1 seed Houston, in which they had Houston. They just couldn't put them away. And it was Texas A&M falling to Houston in overtime in a wild game. It saw buzzer beater, game-tying scores, all kinds of crazy things, bodies flying all over the court. I'll tell you what, Houston escaped that game. I'm not sure how that happened. Houston comes away with a 100-95 win. And I'll tell you what, they really did not deserve that win, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and hate on them because I don't believe that was right, but it is what it is. So, in the bottom of that bracket, that mini bracket, it had Duke, who had beat Vermont, against James Madison, who had beaten Wisconsin. So this was kind of a conundrum. As a matter of fact, it was the James Madison Dukes playing against their namesake of Duke University. So you got to figure, just going into that game in the first place, it was James Madison basically trying to beat themselves, if you know what I mean. And that's just kind of what it looked like. But James Madison had a couple of hard fouls, which were not right. Go back and watch the video. Absolutely wrong. Injured players, concussed players, and they played a very dirty brand of basketball against Duke, and Duke still beat them like a drum. They beat them by 38, 93-55. Yes! So In the Sweet 16, it looks like Houston, number 1 seed against Duke, number 4 seed. That ought to be one fun game, and that's Friday at 6:30 p.m. That would be 6:30 p.m. Pacific time or 9:39 p.m. Eastern time. And on the bottom of that bracket, it featured NC State matching up against that very good Oakland Golden Grizzlies team. And Oakland just ran out of gas. Boy, they had to play against that big center from NC State. And they had them. They had the lead. It was a back-and-forth game. Golke was shooting out of his mind for Oakland. But they just ran into a very large human in the center of the court. And unfortunately for Oakland, the buck stopped there. It was NC State 79, Oakland 73. And on the bottom of that bracket featured Marquette and Colorado, a very inspired game by Colorado, but Marquette was just too much. Marquette 81, Colorado 77 in the round of 32. So in the matchup, in the Sweet 16, it's Marquette and NC State. Boy, that's going to be a titanic matchup, just like the top of that bracket. So essentially, you've got 1 and 4 with Houston and Duke. And then you've got 2 and 11, the 11 seed NC State Wolfpack. Remember, those guys went on a run to win the ACC, and they won their last 5 games, and now they've won the next 2 games. So they've won 7 in a row going into the Marquette game, but I don't see how they get by Marquette. I really don't. I got Marquette advancing against Houston in the Elite 8 to go to the winner of the Final 4. And then, of course, coming out of that bracket, I've got Houston coming out of the bracket. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at the West bracket in the NCAA men's basketball tournament right here on the Sports Circus. Lots more to come, folks. Don't go anywhere. I'm your Ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it out here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time, that's 800-950-2049.
The old way of living with diabetes is a pain. You've got to remember to do your testing and always need to stick your fingers to test your blood sugar. The new way to live your life with diabetes is with a continuous glucose monitor. Apply a discrete sensor on your body, and it continuously monitors your glucose levels, helping you spend more time in range and freeing you from painful finger sticks. If you are living with type 1 or type 2 diabetes and you use insulin or have had hypoglycemic events, you might be eligible for a CGM through your insurance benefits. U.S. Med partners with over 500 private insurance companies and Medicare. We offer free shipping, 90-day supplies, and we bill your insurance. Call us today for a free benefits check.
800-659-7805. 800-659-7805. 800-659-7805. That's 800-659-7805.
That's ridiculous.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, right here in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Welcome back, folks. All right, this segment brought to you in part by your friends at the Sports Circus. Yes, make sure you check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guests, or recorded shows, which are our podcast in full. No, we don't do a podcast. We happen to have our recorded shows stored on a podcast platform like a lot of other shows. And those can be found, all those recorded shows can be found, recorded in their entirety, not edited. They could be found on Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and Google, Amazon, Audible. You pick it, it's probably there. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's Pandora as well. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it's a mass amount of those. So if you want to go on a binge watch for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months or just a binge listen, go get yourself a super tanker of soda or whatever your favorite drink is and get yourself a truckload of popcorn and just listen to the show for 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it is, non-stop. And you won't hear the same episode twice, is my understanding, right? So you got to make sure that you give the Sports Circus a nice round of applause for that. And also make sure you check out our upcoming guests, our prior guests, our recorder shows, as I mentioned. And guess what? Even the upcoming guests include a very, very fun show. And that's going to be either tomorrow or the next day, if I'm not mistaken. I checked the schedule, folks. It's going to be with the great Brian Urlacher. Yes! Brian Urlacher, Hall of Famer from the Chicago Bears, is going to be on with us. And, you know, it will be a fun conversation. Brian's a fun guy to sit and talk with. I've had that chance a few times, and he's just a really cool guy. And look, let's face it, I'm not everyone's favorite person. And sometimes other people aren't favorite people as well of others because we kind of tell it like it is. And in this case, you could look for a fun, loose conversation with Brian Urlacher that could go, I don't know where. And I love that idea because he's just a regular guy with a regular opinion like everybody else, but a very approachable guy. And we're going to have some fun with that. So looking forward to having that conversation with Brian Urlacher. In fact, even the next day, we're supposed to have Tom Flores with us, the great Tom Flores, who's won 4 Super Bowls, another Hall of Famer from Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And Tom's a longtime friend of the show. Tom and I used to work together a long time ago. And just a really, really, really nice man. So we're looking forward to that. The great Sam Adams, he's going to be with us as well. Al Bubba Baker, the quarterback breaker and the rib maker, is going to be with us. And you know what? That's just what we do here, folks. It's not always with a special guest, but sometimes we have them. In fact, Al's our regular football analyst. So that is a regular occurrence here on the show. But, you know, Al Baker always has a lot of good things to say, a lot of controversial things to add as well if you're into it, but is a very straight up, straight shooter guy, and I love that. All right, back to the brackets. Now we're going to go to the West bracket, which featured North Carolina as the, notice the clear of the throat. That was on purpose, folks, because I'm a Duke guy, if you know what I mean. All right, so anyway, North Carolina, who won the ACC tournament. No, they didn't. NC State did. But anyway, they did win the regular season for the ACC, and they earned that number 1 seed in the West bracket. And number 2 in that bracket was Arizona. Very, very good Arizona team. Number 3 was the Baylor Bears. Number 4, Alabama. Number 5, St. Mary's. The Gales from St. Mary's up in the Bay Area. Number 6 is Clemson. Number 7 was the Dayton Flyers. Number 8, Mississippi State Bulldogs. 9, Michigan State. Number 10, Nevada, Reno. Number 11, New Mexico. Number 12, Grand Canyon. Number 13, College of Charleston. 14 was the Colgate, the boys from Colgate. Number 15, of course, we saw was Long Beach State. And, of course, number 16 was Wagner. So here we have a chance again for the small school to get a chance to play the big school. Unlike in college football, college basketball had number 1 North Carolina against Wagner. Well, Wagner had seen better days, but if you're in Germany, you can call him Wagner. Nonetheless, it was 90-62. Carolina easily handling Wagner. At the bottom of the bracket, it was Arizona, 85. Long Beach State, 65. And a very easy win for Arizona. Back to our number 3. And the number 3 was the Baylor Bears getting by Colgate 92-67. Number 4, Alabama with a little bit of trouble with the College of Charleston, 109-96. Imagine 96. Alabama gave up 96. Everybody went to school on that one. And of course, when it came to number 5, it was the St. Mary's Gales losing to the Grand Canyon Antelopes, 75-66 in a shocker. Number 6, Clemson. I got to tell you, folks, I actually had New Mexico over Clemson. It was Clemson 77, New Mexico only 56. That was a very awkward score. Apparently, I must have been on sleep control here or something, because or sleep deprivation when I made the picks, because I couldn't imagine New Mexico losing to Clemson, but Clemson easily with a 21-point victory. And then it was number 7, the Dayton Flyers, narrowing out the Wolfpack of Nevada, 63-60. And then it was number 9, Michigan State over number 8, Mississippi State, which was a shocker for some people, but in this bracket, I actually had Michigan State moving on. So that bracket looks like Michigan State in the round of 32, of course, ended up playing North Carolina. North Carolina with a 16-point win after trailing big. It was Carolina pulling away. The bottom of that bracket was Alabama moving on and beating Grand Canyon in a very hard-fought game. The score was 72-61, but it was a lot closer than what it showed. So the top end of that half of the bracket is Carolina and Alabama in the Sweet 16. And the bottom of that bracket featured Clemson, number 6, against Baylor. And it was Clemson in a wild game. And the score ended up 72-64. But that game, folks, if you watched it, that was one of those head-scratcher games. And it was a 2-point game late in the game. And somehow it ended up finishing out 72-64. Clemson, I don't even know how they won that game, to be honest with you. Just like I don't know how they won the first game against New Mexico, but they blew out New Mexico. But anyway, now they're going to have to face the winner of the Arizona-Dayton game, which was Arizona outlasting Dayton 78-68. So that bracket, the bottom of that bracket, the West bracket, is going to look like Clemson against Arizona. And I've got Arizona advancing in that one. Arizona is clearly the better team, and I believe that they're the best team in the West bracket. They just had some games that they fell asleep at the wheel, but now it's going to be Arizona and North Carolina in the West bracket. That really matches up to be in favor of Arizona as I see it, especially being out west, but also Arizona plays excellent tournament basketball. Historically, they do. So watch out there. Now, over in the Midwestern brackets, we're going to start this one up and finish it up next segment. It was number 1 seed Purdue, 78 over Grambling, 50. And Purdue with a nice win there. And then it was the bottom half of that little bracket was Utah State shocking Texas Christian, even though there was an 8 versus a 9. You never know who's the favorite in that one. Utah State easily over TCU. And then moving down the bracket, it was Gonzaga over McNeese. That wasn't even a game, folks. Gonzaga was all over them like a cheap suit. And then at the bottom half of that little bracket was Kansas in a very, very controversial blocked shot call. Somehow Kansas ends up getting the win over Samford. Samford had them. The referees took it away from them, which was 100% wrong in my opinion. Samford should have moved on to play Gonzaga, but that's not the case. Now, the bottom half of that Midwestern bracket featured Oregon all over South Carolina, 87-73. Creighton, the Blue Jays, all over the Akron Zips, 77-60. Texas, 56. Colorado State, 44. At the bottom of the bracket, number 2 seed is Tennessee with an easy win over St. Peter's in the first round. And so the second round, it was Tennessee and Texas. Tennessee with a very hard-fought win against the Texas Longhorns, 62-58. Top of that bracket featured Oregon against a very good Creighton Blue Jays team, and Creighton easily with a win over Oregon. Now in the Sweet 16, it's Tennessee and Creighton. I actually have that in my bracket. Great news. The top of the bracket featured Purdue against Utah State, and Purdue absolutely used Utah State 106-67, and they're going to face a Gonzaga team that smashed Kansas 89-68. So now it's Purdue number 1 against Gonzaga number 5 in the top of the Western bracket. And the winner of that game will play the winner of the Tennessee and the Creighton Blue Jays game. And of course, needless to say, because I'm an alum of Purdue, and they are arguably the best team in the nation, they have the 2-time Player of the Year award. Actually, he hasn't won the second one just yet, but Zach Edey will win Player of the Year again. That hasn't been done, if I'm not mistaken, since Hakeem Olajuwon. And so Zach Edey is the real deal. In fact, in that game against Grambling, he had 31 points, 20 rebounds by playing half the game. And against Utah State, he ran it up again, but that was a very, very good team win. So it's Purdue coming out of the West. And the Final Four, we've got Carolina coming out of Midwest, Purdue, West, North Carolina. In the South, it's Houston. And in the East, it's UConn. We're going to get to the final game in just a minute on the Sports Circus. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere. And we're going to also talk pizza.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi Code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door. store without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at uppercutchops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at uppercutchops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Al Bubba Baker, quarterback breaker and the rib maker.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Folks, make sure to check out the sportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guests, recorded shows, and all of our partners and sponsors and all the people that have been with us and all the companies that have been with us since the very beginning. And one of those is Cali Vegas, helping people create and host their very own radio, TV, or multimedia talk show right there in their very own home studio. For more information, contact Cali Vegas at info@calivegas.com. That's info@calivegas.com. Yes! All right, welcome back, everybody. All of our television affiliates, our radio affiliates from coast to coast. Everybody also streaming on social media, thanks for doing that. And also a big shout out to our friends over at Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. That's Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. Make sure you join, follow, participate, post your recipes, have some fun, talk about your favorite foods. Why? Just because you can. In fact, we're going to get to a food subject in just a few minutes here after we finish up the NCAA men's Final Four projections. Yes, these are my projections. Why? Because so far my bracket's doing pretty damn good right now. How's your bracket doing, if you know what I mean? So look at it this way. Everybody fills these damn things out. And nobody has a perfect bracket in the men's bracket. I'm not really sure about the women's. I don't really follow the women's bracket so much. But I can tell you that the men's bracket that I've got in front of me that I've filled out, it's doing quite well. And all four of my teams are intact. So out of the left side of the bracket, which is the West and the East, I've got UConn playing Carolina. An extended round of applause, because I'll say that, look, not being a fan, you have to take your personal opinion out of these things. Right? You have to take these teams for what they're worth, what they show, what they've demonstrated. And look, these teams are worthy of being there, whether I like it or not. It doesn't even matter. UConn's been consistent all year. They've been hovering around the number one slot in the rankings all year, and they end up being the number one overall seed. Well, and we'll see if they can take care of business against, as I have it projected. First, they have to get by San Diego State, which I think they'll be able to do that. And then Illinois has to get by Iowa State. That is no small order. But I've got Illinois and UConn playing. But if UConn can get past them in the round of 8, I've got them going to the Final Four. And it just seems like UConn is almost, I wouldn't say a team of destiny, but they're destined to be in the Final Four. But then if they do make it there, as I have projected in the Final Four, I've got UConn playing a well-seasoned Carolina team who is led by Armando Bacot. And that kid is no joke. This boy can play. They have a very well-rounded team. They play fairly solid defense. They do fall asleep once in a while, but I've got UConn playing Carolina in the Final Four. That's on April 6th. The round of 4 features them and on the other side of the bracket, which I'll get to in a moment. But it just seems to me that UConn being so consistent all year, I don't think they'll have too terribly much trouble beating Carolina. Or wait a minute! Maybe they're going to have a bad game. I actually have the upset in this bracket, and I've got Carolina advancing to the championship game from the left side of the bracket, which is the East and West. Now, going over to the South and the Midwest, and it is the South with the University of Houston. They were the number 1 seed. And, they didn't play very well in the last month or so of the regular season, and they've been kind of eking by these games. Somehow, I have them getting past Marquette in the Elite Eight. I believe Marquette's a better team, but I also believe that Houston will get up for the game. Marquette's been up for their games almost all year. Boy, they've been very, very solid. Going to give it up to them because those guys, Shaka Smart's group, they play a really, really fun brand of basketball to watch. But they do have lulls during the game where it almost seems like they're the ones that fall asleep at the wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get Houston in over them in this particular bracket. And I've got them facing off against the Purdue Boilermakers, which feature Zach Edey, Mr. Lawyer, and all kinds of other huge bodies and great point guards. This is an upperclassman team, largely. There are a lot of big bodies. There's 2 or 3 7-footers on that team, which would pose a problem for anybody. Featuring, of course, Zach Edey, last year's Player of the Year, likely will win it this year as well. And boy, they have some really good guard play at Purdue. They're not the best defenders. All BS aside, they really aren't the best defenders. And this was their Achilles heel through the year. But Houston doesn't play big teams like this as far as big in size or experienced teams with big upperclassmen as well. So I've got Purdue getting by Houston in a wild game. And I think Houston, with their defense, they're going to try to shut Purdue down. But there's going to be no answer again for Zach Edey. There's just no answer for him. I don't think any team in the country, any basketball team in the country, has a real answer for Zach Edey. And I think the NBA is going to have a hard time with him too, because the guy is a really good defender. He's a rebounding machine. He shoots very well from the free throw line. And if I'm not mistaken, he's 50% from three-point land at 1 for 2. Anyway, but the guy is a solid player. He rotates well. His footwork's really, really strong. And this guy's not stupid. He brings the ball into his hands, and he doesn't put the ball on the floor. Now, he keeps the ball high like he's supposed to, so the shorter guys can't get to it. So Zach Edey is a very tough guy to play against. I think Houston's really going to have their hands full with this guy. And I'm thinking that game's going to end up maybe 81 Purdue, 72 Houston. And so that would give the final matchup as I have it in this bracket. Everybody's got their own bracket. Get over it. This bracket features Purdue, the Boilermakers of Purdue. Yes, round of applause for them, against Carolina. Yes, and the chorus of boos rings out. Not really a fan of Carolina. But anyway, I've got Carolina advancing to the championship game against Purdue. And if you look at these two teams, again, Carolina's going to have the same problem that all the other schools have had against Purdue. I don't think they have an answer for 2, let alone 3 7-footers, because Purdue can put 2 on the floor, which poses a big problem because one of them is a rebounding machine. The other guy's just a big body. So the bigger question is, pick your poison. Do you want to get beat by the guard play, the really good shooting guards, or do you want to get beat down low? Chances are they're going to get beat down low. Baycott will have no answer for Zach Edey, none. And so this is Purdue's year to win the national title. That's one of the reasons that Zach Edey came back. He also wants to graduate, so that's really good news when you get a graduating senior. He'll go to the NBA and make millions and millions of dollars, whatever. Good for him. But the Big Maple, of course, Zach Edey being from Canada, the Big Maple is going to hoist that trophy. He may host it too, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's going to be Purdue over North Carolina in the championship game. And do I have a score? I don't know. Am I ready to give a score yet? I think the Boilers will probably score maybe 74 points in the championship game against whoever they play, whether it's Carolina or UConn. But if it is UConn, maybe they might score a little bit more. I'm not really sure about that one. But I've got in this bracket, it's Carolina. I have another bracket with Connecticut and Purdue in it. But I'm going to stick with this one because somehow I think that these two teams will see a matchup. And a lot of it, folks, we go back to the Big Ten ACC, that tournament that we see early in the year. And I think this is almost an extension of that. So we're going to give it up to the Purdue Boilermakers as your national champion. Yes! That will be very exciting. Okay, now switching to food in our last couple of minutes here. Well, they do this really interesting thing in Chicago. It's by WGN Radio. WGN is a very large radio station, 50,000 watt. It stands for World's Greatest Network. Been around for a long, long time. They do this Chicago Pizza Madness tournament. So they pin, in the same way as the college basketball tournament, this is for everybody on Chicago Food Favorites, they pin the 64 alleged best pizzerias in Chicagoland against one another to come up with their citywide champion, or their Northern Illinois champion, if you look at it that way. So they actually break it down by city, north suburbs, local chains, and then south and west suburbs. So a lot of these I don't necessarily agree with, and the reason being is because I don't see certain pizzerias that are arguably some of the best in here, or you see them losing to chains that are just terrible. And it really makes you scratch your head. It's like, okay, follow the money, just like we do in sports gambling. We're going to do that in pizza gambling as well, right? So we're going to see these alleged favorites in Chicago, which, look, Napoli in Italy was where the pizza margherita was first invented. Then it was brought to New York by some of the boys from Italy, and then they kept that little greasy, flat, horrific product in New York, and that's what they call New York pizza, which is, in my opinion, it's absolutely awful. And then some of the people that came over, like my grandparents, they came over from Italy, they went over to Chicago, right? So half went to New York, half went to Chicago. But in Chicago, they actually perfected the pizza. And so, no, not all Chicago pizza is the deep dish pizza. And there's a reason for deep dish pizza in the first place. And what they really wanted to do in Chicago was they wanted to take a pizza, right? And they said, you know what? We want to make it into a meal where you can actually fork and knife it. So what they did was they created this really deep dish, butter crusted pizza. So it's, imagine like in a cake pan. So you have this butter crust, and then they put the cheese down right as the first layer. And then they put the toppings, and then they put the sauce on top. And the way they cook it that way, it's rather ingenious, but it's good stuff. So the deep dish pizzas and your regular thin crust pizza, they call them tavern pizzas in some places. But the thin crust pizzas, then they have the Sicilian thick pizzas too. But the reality is Chicago is the pizza capital of the world. And they do this tournament over there in Chicagoland. In my opinion, arguably the best regular thick crust pizza and even thin crust pizza is Salerno's, and that's Salerno's on the Fox River over in St. Charles, Illinois. They also have other ones around the city, but then you have your deep dish pizzas as well, and one that has won the National Pizza of the Year, apparently the best pizza in America, is one called Pequod's. It's over on the north side of Chicago. I haven't really tried that one yet. It's a very interesting way to make it, but there's so many good pizzas in Chicagoland. I believe this 2024 Chicago Pizza Madness Tournament is a bunch of crap, and let's get rid of it. Yes! And you go to your favorite pizza place, I'll go to my favorite pizza place, and together we'll have Pizza Madness of our own. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today. I'm your Ringmaster Sal. We'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Till then, so long, everyone.
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time, that's 800-950-2049.